cafeteria air is heavy with the scent of sloppy joes and yellow sheet cakes. As Tamika navigates the maze of long rectangular tables, her own homemade lunch, turkey and puree on broccoli roll, remains untouched. Now that Principal Kim is on board, Hoop Group's permanent chaperone, is a full season once again possible. And Tamika doesn't have time to eat. She is on a mission to lure kids back to the program and turn them into a team again. Chris is holding court with 3 other former Hoop Groupers when Tamika strolls up to their table and takes a seat. "I just had to talk with Principal Kim," she says, her voice devoid of emotion. Hoop Group is back on and tryouts are in 2 days. Chris places his bag of plain potato chips on his tray and turns his body towards Tamika. "Who are you talking to?" "I'm obviously talking to y'all," Tamika says as she waves her hand in a circular motion in front of the 4 boys. "Nah, you can't be talking to us. We already on the team." Tamika cocks her head to the side, as if misunderstanding is simply the result of not hearing Chris properly. "What team?" Chris smiles, his lips dripping with disdain. "Oh, you ain't heard? My pop started a new program down at the Y. It's called the Ballers, and it's the best basketball program in Lorden." Tamika feels heat rising into her chest and stands up from the table. "I hate to break it to you," Chris continues, "but Hoop Group is washed. Anybody who's worth anything down with the Ballers." Chris looks at the boys gathered around him like pigeons angling for a single cube of bread. "Y'all feel me, right?" In the chorus of yelps and fahoos, but Tamika can't hear any of it. The warmth has risen to her face, and her brain is furiously trying to salvage her own comeback from the wreckage of her Hoop Group hopes. She opens her mouth, ready to inhalate Chris and his minions, but she is stunned when the words she hears aren't hers. They're Anthony's. "So anybody who's worth anything is playing with the Ballers," he says, stepping up to the table and towering over the still-seated Chris. "Tell me why you on the team then, because last time I saw you, you definitely weren't much of a baller." Chris on his feet now, too, smirking and posturing as his encouraged looks on. Tamika takes a note of the ooze that trickle over from the nearby tables as he steps up to Anthony's bold 6-inch height difference. Means nothing. "I know you ain't talking, big boy," Chris says. "You're the one who's 10 feet tall and still can't make a layup." That's enough to exhilarate a full-on uproar from Chris's table. His boys flap fives and praise their fearless leader, while Tamika watches Anthony's face gather into an angry scowl. "I never said I was a baller. That's just what you say about yourself," Anthony says. "It's just a shame Jaden ate you up so bad that you had to run home and cry to your daddy about it." Chris shrugs. "Yeah, okay." Then a pause. "But at least I can run home and cry to my daddy." In an instant, the cafeteria falls silent, even way across the room where the cheer squad had engaging in a rather loud back and forth about an article in the new issue of C magazine. Everyone is waiting for Anthony's next move. Already, there were only a couple of feet separating the 2 boys, but Anthony closes in them quickly, his eyes tight and focused. "Still want to be Floyd Mayweather, huh?" Chris says, refusing to back down. "Go ahead and hit me then. I can tell Principal Kim your little punishment ain't working." He shakes his head and turns towards Tamika. "You might want to tell your guard dog to back up before y'all end up with only 2 players on the Hoop Group." In a flash, Tamika steps in between Chris and Anthony. With all the strength she can muster, shoves Anthony away from Chris's table. "Everybody just stop," she says. This is the second time she's seen Chris push anyone to the side like this. And after seeing Anthony outside of Principal Kim's office, she's worried that Chris might have punished Anthony a little too far. Tamika leads Anthony to an empty table far from Chris and his cronies. Once they are out of earshot and Anthony's breathing has returned to normal with a softness in her heart and her eyes, she says, "What the heck is going on with you?" That morning, when Anthony told Tamika he had to talk to her later, He hadn't imagined that later would come so soon. Neither had he imagined that Chris King would try him like that in front of half the 7th grade. But changes just in the cafeteria ran out of bacon during free breakfast. Just like the cafeteria runs out of bacon during free breakfast, quickly and frequently. So with no other option, Anthony takes a deep breath and tells Tamika everything. He tells her what happened at the end of the school last year and how he asked Tyson Rowley if he was going to finish his lunch, even though he didn't actually want Tyson's stupid bologna sandwich. Then Tyson gave it up, and somehow the sandwich wasn't enough. It was just too easy. Anthony asked Tyson for his homework next, and then his phone, and all of it dropped in Anthony's lap. With no resistance, no pushing, no pulling, none of the drama he was used to at home. It made Anthony snap. He hadn't meant to, not really. He just wanted Tyson to tell him to stop. To put up even half a fight. But he didn't. He wouldn't. Tyson just kept on giving in. So Anthony resorted to the only other thing he knew. He split Tyson's lip and sent Tyson to the hospital with a possible concussion. When he finishes the story, Anthony says about the shock on Tamika's face. Coca-Cola-colored eyes are now wide and unblinking. Instead, he tells her about Principal Kim's commitment to working with kids who have been in trouble before, even when it seems like those kids have nothing left to work with. Principal Kim says that helping kids become well-functioning people outside the classroom is just as important as teaching them math and science inside of it. So in addition to making him join hoop group, she meets Anthony twice a week and talks about whatever's on his mind. What do y'all want to talk about, Tamika says. Anthony sighs and rubs his large hand over his forehead. I don't know, mostly my dad, I guess. Lately, Anthony's dad has been drunk far more often than he's been sober. He comes stumbling home into the evening, sweaty and belligerent after he stopped at some bar and spent money he doesn't even have on liquor he doesn't need. It's always like that, though. Back when Anthony's dad was a staff accountant in the local children's hospital, it was his job to make sure families paid their kids' medical bills, and he was home by 6 and spent most of the evenings cradling a bottle of cherry Coke. He had a tendency to anger then, too. But his rage was always restrained, never reckless. And then Anthony's dad got laid off. Not being able to pay his own family's bills seemed to break something inside of him. All at once, everything changed. Arguments between Anthony's parents about money, about Anthony, about the daytime drinking grew increasingly violent. And one day, one ugly, dreary day on the middle of January, Anthony's dad got so mad that he pushed Anthony's mom down a flight of stairs. She was paralyzed instantly. The following weeks of the police were blurs of police officers, caseworkers, and family therapists because Anthony's father said the fall was an accident and his mother agreed. No charges were pressed, but that still couldn't have saved their family from the chaos that consumed them. Anthony's little brother, Beans, was shipped off to live with an aunt in Atlanta, while Anthony stayed behind, pledging to protect his mother no matter what. Anthony stops talking now and takes the air slowly through his mouth, willing his body to calm. All of the terror and trauma, this is part of the story that's triggering him the most. Even though he's the one telling it, he never feels like the story belongs to him. If he's honest, his mother's fall and never-ending fallout feel like someone else's nightmare. Even if they both continue to haunt him every waking hour, Anthony counts his breaths just like Principal Kim taught him. 2, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. Then he continues. For a while, Anthony tells Tamika his dad was so overcome with regret and grief that the drinking stopped. But with his mom in a wheelchair and unable to work, the pressure on Anthony's dad soon began to snowball. He started working around the clock, collecting trash here, painting houses there, and doing whatever he could to keep the lights on and the fridge at least halfway full. Thankfully, Anthony's dad is able to take care of the family's basic necessities. But there's still little money left at the end of the month. For him, there's even less life. Over the last 6 or 7 months, Anthony's frustrations have been pooling and gathering and slowly warming like a pot of water that is moments away from bubbling over. Now that drinking has started back up again, too, and so has the outburst. Now that Anthony's mom has lost all independence and ability to fight back, most of those outbursts are directed towards Anthony. Principal Kim says that Anthony's dad is just disappointed in himself and his circumstances. He feels helpless and unable to change things for the better. Anthony wants to believe her, but this instinct is to blame himself when his father lashes out. After all, his grades haven't been great and he struggles to stay out of trouble. All of this just places more stress on his family. He believes he's so absorbed in his father's rage and stuffs it to keep within. There are festers until, as with any wound left unhealed, it gets infected and seeps out, rotten and stinking for everyone to see. When Anthony finally looks up after taking what feels like hours, he expects Tamika to have run away, but there she remains with care and empathy etched into her perfectly beautiful brown skin. "I'm really sorry," Anthony says. "I didn't mean to talk so much. I'm sure you probably didn't want to hear." "No, I'm glad you told me," Tamika says, gently interrupting. "I'm so sorry you have to deal with all of that." Her lips spread into a smile. "I know it probably doesn't mean much since you're not really into basketball, but I'm glad you're in hoop group. Really, this is going to be the best hoop group season ever. I promise." In the next moment, the bell rings to signal the end of the lunch period, and Anthony watches Tamika offer her one last smile, throws her bag over her shoulder, and rushes off down the hall. He watches as she blends in so effortlessly with the other middle schoolers, all the other kids whose lives must be 10 times better than his. Anthony watches them, but he doesn't move. He doesn't move because he's frozen, weighted by the gravity of Tamika's judgmental free acceptance.